The following disclaimer is for those in California only. Pursuant to California Assembly Bill 2571, it is illegal for the advertisement and or marketing of any firearm-related products and or programs in a manner that is designed, intended, or reasonably appears to be attractive to minors. As such, if you are currently in California, this program is restricted to only those that are over 18. Please turn this program off now if you are in California and under 18. Now, on to the program. Hello and welcome to the centertenspodcast. Center-Tens is a podcast that discusses small bore and precision air rifle from junior shooting sports on up to NCAA collegiate and Olympic competition. And now here's your host, Adam Pearson. Hello and welcome to another episode of Center-Tens. This week, before we get into NCAA competition, we have some exciting news in NCAA rifle. We have a new rifle team starting up for next year. And I hope I say this right. Mount Aloysius College out of Pennsylvania is launching a co-ed NCAA rifle team. They will be a D3 team under NCAA rules for rifle. They will be competing against pretty much D1, D2 teams. There is no split or separation between D1, D2, and D3 under competition. So they'll be competing against schools such as Ohio State, MIT, things like that. Their coach is Sierra Crum, a Portage, Pennsylvania native. She graduated from Morehead State University in 2019. She was named to the Collegiate Rifle Coaches Association Scholastic All-American Rifle Team for her freshman and sophomore years, and as a senior, she qualified for the 2019 NCAA National Air Rifle Championships. So this is exciting that we've got a new team. We like seeing the sport grow. So hopefully we'll see more teams in the future. So now we'll get into the competitions for the week. First match we're going to start with was held at Navy in Annapolis. We saw West Virginia, Navy, and Akron all competing. West Virginia topped that match with an aggregate score of 47-39. Navy came in second with 46-97. And Akron came in third with a 46-96. West Virginia had a 23-47 small bore score and a school record air of 23-92 to Navy's 23-22 small bore and 23-75 air. Then Akron had a 23-36 small bore, 23-60 air. The top shooters for this match for West Virginia, you had Molly McGinn with an 11.88. Navy, Marley Duncan had an 11.81. And for Akron, Rachel Ingalls shot an 11.82. The scoring teams for West Virginia, small bore, we saw Matt Sanchez with a personal record of a 5.93. Then Molly McGinn with a 5.89. Mallory Brown with a 5.85. And Natalie Perrin with a 5.80. The air rifle team, we had a pair of 5.99s from Molly McGinn and Lori Sierra. Griffin Lake came in with a 5.98, which tied his career high. And then Natalie Perrin shot a 5.96. For Navy, small bore team was Marley Duncan with a 5.88. Stephanie Milivane with a 5.82. Isabella Baldwin with a 5.81. And Deontay Hayes with a 5.71. In air, had Isabella Baldwin with a 5.97. Marley Duncan with a 5.93, as well as Ryan Wee with a 5.93. And then Clarissa Leyland rounded it out with a 5.92. For Akron, the small bore team was Gavin Prokowski with a 5.88, Natalia Seek with a 5.84, Rachel Ingalls with a 5.83, and Lex Kirk with a 5.81. In their air, Lex Kirk had a 5.95, Gavin Prokowski a 5.93, Andrew DeRoss with a 5.87, and Brennan Seitz with a 5.85. The second match of the weekend, we saw Citadel's mixed and women's team competing against VMI mixed and women's teams. The Citadel mixed team topped that match with a 46-11 aggregate. VMI mixed came in second with a 45-98. The Citadel women's team came in third with a 44-51. And VMI women's came in fourth with a 44-32. The scores Citadel Mix had a 2285 small bore and a 2326 air. BMI had a 2276 small bore, 2322 air. The Citadel women's team had a 2178 small bore and a 2373 air. Then VMI women's had a 2165 small bore and a 2267 air. The top shooters for the match, for the Citadel mixed team, you had James Hart IV with an 1177. For the VMI mixed team, Christopher Hicks had an 1160. The Citadel women's, you had Megan Mix with a 1140. And the VMI women's team, you had Victoria Phillips with an 1139. The scoring teams for the Citadel mixed team, you had James Hart IV with a 588. Charlotte Welsh with a 577. Carson Wood with a 567. And Dalton Bonite with a 553. For air, James Hart IV had a 589. Charlotte Welsh with a 585. Carson Wood with a 581. And Dalton Bonite with a 571. The VMI mixed team, the small bore team was Christopher Hicks with a 577. Ryan Harlow with a 573. Michael Ball with a 569. And Michael Anesi with a 557. Their air team, they had a pair of 583s from Christopher Hicks and Ryan Harlow. Zachary Mariello with a 580, and Philip Frey with a 576. For the Citadel women's team, their small bore team was Megan Mix with a 562, Deanna Douglas with a 545, Emma Goldman with a 538, and Michaela Martin with a 533. In air, Michaela Martin shot a 585, Megan Mix a 578, Deanna Douglas with a 562, and Omen Goldman with a 548. The VMI women's team, you had Victoria Phillips with a 566 in small bore, Emma Cameron with a 556, Adriana Saunders with a 530, and Darian Tweedle with a 513. In air, Victoria Phillips shot a 573, Adriana Saunders shot a 570, Emma Cameron with a 568, and Darian Tweedle with a 556. The third match of the weekend, we saw Jacksonville State going to Moorhead. Jacksonville topped that match with a 46-82 to Moorhead's 46-62. Jacksonville State shot a 23-20 small bore and a 23-62 air to Moorhead State's 23-11 small bore, 23-51 air. The top shooters for Jacksonville State was Franz Rasmussen with an 11.74, and for Moorhead State was Andrew Morris with an 11.84. The scoring teams, Jacksonville State small bore team, Sam Burrow with a 5.83, Franz Rasmussen with a 5.81, as well as Lars Lillich with a 5.81, and Clark McWhorter with a 5.75. Their air team, Annie Iannotti, shot a 5.94, Franz Rasmussen a 5.93, Sam Burrow a 5.88, and Lars Lillich a 5.87. Moorhead State's team, their small bore, Holly Freeman shot a 5.82, Bryce Ward a 5.79, Marina Koenig a 5.77, and Hayden Bell a 5.73. Their air team was Andrew Morris with a 5.92, Hayden Bell with a 5.88, Adriana Beard with a 5.87, and Bryce Ward with a 5.84. Next, we saw Ole Miss traveling to Army up at West Point. Ole Miss topped that match with a 47.03 to Army's new school program record of a 46.96. Ole Miss shot a 23-28 small bore and a 23-75 air. Army shot a new program record in small bore of a 23-35 and a 23-61 air. The top shooters for Ole Miss was Emma Pereira with an 11.80 and Kyle Cutts with an 11.78. Their scoring teams for Ole Miss, you saw Emma Pereira shooting a 5.86, as well as Leah Horvath. Then we also had a pair of 5.78s from Kristen Derding and Juliana Hayes. In air, Kristen Derding shot a 5.98. Emma Pereira shot a 5.94. Martina Gratz shot a 5.93. And Leah Horvath shot a 5.90. For Army, small bore was Kyle Cutts with a 5.87. Then we had a pair of 5.83s from Anusha Packham and Chris Jennings, and a 5.82 from Briggs Moore. The air team, Briggs Moore shot a 5.94. Kyle Cutts a 5.91. Then we had a pair of 5.88s from Anusha Packham and Claudia Siegel. Match number 5 on the weekend. We saw Memphis traveling to Murray State. Murray State topped that match with a 47-14 to Memphis's 46-83. Murray State shot a 23-35 small bore, 23-79 air. to Memphis's 23-14 small bore, 23-69 air. Top shooters, you had Caroline Martin from Murray State with an 11.82. And for Memphis, Gabriela Zeich shot 11.78. For the scoring teams, in Murray State small bore team, we had a pair of 5.85s from Scott Patterson and Matthias Kiru, a 5.84 from John Blanton, and a 5.81 from Zach Jackson. In air, Allison Henry and Matthias Kiru both shot 5.96s. Had a 5.94 from Caroline Martin, and John Blanton shot a 5.93. For Memphis in small bore, Gabriela Zeich shot a 5.83. Kenley Uten, a 5.82. Angeline Henry, a 5.78. And Jack Kersey, a 5.71. In air, Gabriela Zeich shot a 5.95. Sophie Cruz shot a 5.93. Jack Kersey, a 5.92. And Angeline Henry, a 5.89. Next, we're going to move to UTEP in El Paso, Texas, where Nebraska traveled to compete. Nebraska topped that match with a 47-20 to UTEP's 45-47. Nebraska shot a 23-39 small bore, 23-81 air to UTEP's 23-36 small bore, 23-11 air. The top shooters for the match, Cecilia Ossie shot an 11.91. And for UTEP, Isabella Rios shot 11.53. The scoring teams for small bore Nebraska, Cecilia Ossie shot a new personal record of 5.97. Emma Road shot a 5.84. Charlotte Mick a 5.83. They had a 5.75 Mackenzie Strouch. In air, both Charlotte Mick and Emma Road shot 5.97s. Had a 5.94 from Cecilia Ossie and Mackenzie Strouch with a 5.93. For UTEP, the small board team was Isabella Frios with a 5.69. Roxanne Keel with a 5.60. Paige Hildebrandt with a 5.55. And Isabel Brooks with a 5.52. In air, Isabella Rios shot a 5.74. Roxanne Keel a 5.78. Isabel Brooks with a 5.76. And Paige Hildebrandt a 5.73. And the last match for Saturday, we saw North Georgia against Woolford at North Georgia. North Georgia shot a 46.52 to Woolford's 44.14. North Georgia small bore was a 22.95 and a 23.57 air to Woolford's 21.53 small bore and 22.61 air. Top shooters for North Georgia, you had Alyssa Walter with an 11.68. And for Woolford, you had Garrett Dahl with an 11.20. The scoring teams, North Georgia small bore team was Alyssa Walter with a 5.76. Then we had a personal record from Courtney Allison with a 5.74. Maya Cameron also shot a 5.74. Madison Kennedy with a 5.71. In air, Alyssa Walter shot a 5.92, as well as Maya Cameron. Jaden Frazier a 5.90, and Alyssa Yancey a 5.83. For Woolford, their small bore team was Garrett Dahl with a 5.52. Ainsley Brooks Springer with a 5.41. Charlie Yang with a 5.31. And Chanson Bullard with a 5.29. In air, Ainsley Brooks Springer shot a 5.77. Garrett Dahl a 5.68. Chanson Bullard a 5.62. And Charlie Yang a 5.54. Moving on to Sunday, we saw Ohio State traveling to Colorado Springs to compete against Air Force. Air Force topped that match with a 47-36. They tied their program record to Ohio State's 4,700. Air Force shot a 23.55 small bore, 23.81 air to Ohio State's 23.29 small bore, 23.71 air. The top shooters, you had Air Force for Morgan Krebs with an 11.88. And for Ohio State, you had Victor Kiss with an 11.84. The scoring teams, Air Force small bore, you had Morgan Krebs with a 5.93. Panaya D'Souza with a 5.90. Lauren Hurley with a 5.89. Scott Rocket with a 5.83. Their air rifle team, you had Lauren Hurley with a 5.97. Panaya D'Souza and Morgan Krebs both shot 5.95s. Victoria Leopard rounded it out with a 5.94. For Ohio State, you had Victor Kiss with a 5.88 small bore. Adrian Hansen with a 5.81, as well as Derek Kaiser with a 5.81. And Paige Hollowell with a 5.79. In air, Victor Kiss shot a 5.96. Paige Hollowell shot a 5.94. Derek Kaiser a 5.91. And Adrian Hansen with a 5.90. Next, we saw Nebraska and UTEP again in El Paso. Nebraska topped this match with a 47-03 to UTEP's 45-47. Nebraska shot a 23-24 small bore and 23-79 air to UTEP's 22-38 small bore, 23-09 air. The top shooters, you had Cecilia Ossie with an 11-78 and Isabel Rios with an 11-54 for UTEP. The scoring teams for Nebraska, you saw Cecilia Ossie with a 5.87, Mackenzie Strauch with a 5.83, Emma Rode with a 5.80, and Charlotte Mick with a 5.74. For their air team, you saw Emma Rode with a 5.96, then Mackenzie Strauch and Charlotte Mick both with 5.95s, and Camilla Johansson with a 5.93. For UTEP, we saw Isabella Rios shooting a 5.72 in small bore, followed by Paige Hildebrandt with a 5.63, Roxanne Keel with a 5.56, and Isabel Brooks with a 5.47. In air, Roxanne Keel shot a 5.84, Isabella Rios a 5.82, Isabel Brooks with a 5.72, and Paige Hildebrandt with a 5.71. The 10th match of the weekend, we saw TCU shooting against Citadel. TCU topped that match with a 46-98 to the Citadel mixed team of 4,600 and the Citadel women's team of a 43-87. TCU shot a 23-28 small bore, 23-70 air to Citadel's 22-80 small bore, 23-20 air. Then Citadel women's with a 21-26 small bore, 22-61 air. The top shooters for this match, you saw Stephanie Allen for TCU with an 11.84. For the Citadel mixed team was James Hart IV with an 11.69. And Citadel women's team was Megan Mix with an 11.51. The scoring teams, TCU small bore was Stephanie Allen with a 5.89. Nicole Hogan with a 5.87. Nina Schuett with a 5.81. And Kaylin Slaughter with a 5.69. In air, Stephanie Allen shot a 5.95. Nicole Hogan a 5.93, as well as Nina Schuett with a 5.93. And Kaylin Slaughter with a 5.89. For the Citadel mixed team, we had a pair of 5.77s in small bore from Carson Wood and James Hart IV. Then Charlotte Welsh came in with a 5.70, and Dalton Bonite with a 5.56. In air, James Hart IV shot a 5.92, Charlotte Welsh a 5.88, Carson Wood with a 5.75, and Dalton Bonite with a 5.65. The Citadel women's team, small bore, Megan Mix with a 5.67, Michaela Martin with a 5.23, Deanna Douglas with a 5.21, and Omen Goldman with a 5.15. Their air team was Michaela Martin with a 5.86, Megan Mix a 5.84, Deanna Douglas a 5.49, and Emma Goldman with a 5.42. Next, we saw Memphis traveling to UT Martin. Memphis topped that match with a 46-91 to UT Martin's 46-24. Memphis shot a 23-16 small bore and a 23-75 air to UT Martin's 22-96 small bore and 23-28 air. The top shooters, Memphis was Gabriela Zeich with an 11.82, and UT Martin's top shooter was Atlanta Walther with an 11.77. Your scoring teams for Memphis in small bore, you had Gabriela Zeich with a 5.86, Jack Kersey with a 5.81, Sophie Cruz with a 5.76, and Kenley Uton with a 5.73. Their air team, you saw Gabriela Zeich shooting a 5.96, Angeline Henry a 5.95, Sophia Cruz a 5.93, and Kenley Uton a 5.91. For UT Martin, their small bore team was Elena Walther with a 5.86, Nicholas Fairs with a 5.82, had a 5.77 from Joseph Kovac, and a 5.51 from Jeffrey Becerra. In air, Elena Walther shot a 5.91, Nicholas Fairs a 5.89, Joseph Kovac a 5.75, and Aubrey Summers with a 5.73. The final match of the weekend was Ole Miss versus John Jay. They were actually shooting in at West Point at Army. Ole Miss topped that match with a 46-99 to John Jay's 42-38. Ole Miss shot a 23-26 small bore and a 23-73 air to John Jay's 20-53 small bore and 21-85 air. Your top shooters for Ole Miss was Emma Pereira with an 11.80, and for John Jay was Danny Canning with an 11.34. For your scoring teams, in small bore, Ole Miss was Emma Pereira with a 5.86, and then we had a three-way tie with 5.80s from Reagan Diamond, Juliana Hayes, and Leah Horvath. In air, Reagan Diamond shot a 595. Then we had a pair of 594s from Emma Pereira and Kristen Durting, and 590 from Martina Gratz. From John Jay, their scoring teams in small bore, we had Danny Canning with a 557, Caitlin Ayers with a 521, Rochelle Redwood with a 506, and Natalia Ajbars with a 569. In air, you had Danny Canning with a 577, Natalia Ajbars with a 547, Rochelle Redwood with a 533, and Sixmiri Yehemen Ortiz with a 528. So that is all the matches for this week, and kind of have a strange schedule coming up. Today, as this episode is dropping, we're going to see Ohio State competing against Air Force and Alaska at Ohio State, and they're gearing up for the Patriot Rifle Conference Championships, which actually is going to be held over the weekend at the X Count in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And there we're going to see Air Force, Alaska Fairbanks, Nebraska, Ohio State, TCU, and UTEP all competing together. And then we're also going to see at Moorhead, we're going to see Moorhead competing against Murray State and UT Martin. Then we're going to see North Georgia, Citadel, and Wofford all competing. We're going to have Army versus Navy. And then Ole Miss, Alabama, Birmingham, and Georgia Southern all competing at Georgia Southern. And then the last match for the weekend, we're going to see Akron, MIT, and Norwich all competing. So that'll be it for this week, what's coming up for matches. And real quick, we'll go over looking at the current standings for NCAAs. Doesn't look like we've had much movement. Still have West Virginia at 1, TCU at 2, and 3rd we have Kentucky. Then we have Alaska Fairbanks sitting at 4th, Georgia Southern at 5th, Air Force at 6th, Ole Miss at 7th, and Nebraska still holding on at 8th. And still sitting there in the bubble, we have Murray State sitting at 9th and Ohio State at 10th. And they both have the exact same aggregate score, pretty much at 9th and 10th. So they're both trying to scoot into that 8th position. That'll be it for this week. And like we always like to say, the most important shot is the one that is in front of you. Thank you for listening to Season 1 of Center Tens. If you like the show, please leave a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast and Spotify. This helps out tremendously. Give us a follow on Instagram and Facebook at Center Tens. Center Tens can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Buzzsprout, Pocket Cast, and at centertens.com. Hope you join us for our next episode.